Alright, so we're gonna do it a little bit differently this time. Normally we look at the old tier list and we just change some stuff and see where it goes. This time around though, I'm gonna start with a blank page. I'm gonna start with a blank page and we'll go down the list one by one, starting with Androxus, and then yeah, basically that. We're going to, this is for, so last time we did a casual tier list, casual ranked tier list with insight into the competitive, and this time we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do high-end casual, high-end ranked, and competitive tier list with some insight into each champion and how they perform in casuals and like the differences. Because again, a character like Skye, for instance, can do very well in a casual game, but won't do very well in higher-end casual, ranked, and competitive games. So this is oriented towards players that are looking to get into competitive, already are in competitive, who are trying to improve and trying to see what characters they should be practicing and what characters they can sort of ignore. So for starters, Androxus. Androxus is basically the same spot as he was last patch. S tier, basically just, he has a little bit of everything. The only thing he really lacks is some range. Right now though, he has high ground, he has mobility, he can play safe, he has damage, he can follow up, or he can fight solo. Like, he can basically do anything that he wants, and that's what makes him so strong right now. He just fits into the meta really well. High mobility, high survivability, and it's very hard to make mistakes on Androxus. Next up, Barrack. Barrack's still kind of that solid A tier. It goes for a lot of tanks where they exist, they're there. If you need a tank, you can pick them up. Just like with some carries, if you need a carry, you can pick them up. It's just like this generic tier of they exist, they're ready to be played at any time, and they can fit into the majority of comps just fine. Bomb King, same with Androxus, is S tier. For similar reasons, he has the mobility, he has the high ground control, he has a lot of options to get in and out of fights really quickly, and just like Androxus, he can either fight solo and he can 1v1 people if needed, but the main thing being that he can follow up on a tank. Like if Makoa gets a hook, Bomb King can be there and he's ready to help, unlike say Drogos, who's it's a bit harder to follow up on other people. So it's Bomb King's that S tier in this meta at least, where he can get in and out of fights and he can contribute in multiple aspects of team fights. Buck, I'd say, is B+ tier. He kind of struggles, like especially after the nerfs came to his HP. He has a hard time fitting into the meta. Yes, he has the mobility, and yes, he can follow up on teammates, but it's so easy to just get punished because you have to be so close. You have to be so close to be impactful. Then he can get blown up really quickly, unlike Androxus, who has his reversal and can dash out. Buck he jumps in, and if he jumps out, then sure, it's fine, but a lot of the time he's not even going to get the chance to jump out, he's just gonna die. And especially if you accidentally use both your jumps, then you're gonna die pretty much every time. So the inconsistent damage along with the lackluster survivability just puts him in a not great state. That being said, you still can pick him. That's kind of what B+ tier is for. You can play them if you want, and they can fit into certain comps, but they're not going to be just a generic damage dealer or flanker pick, basically. Cassie's like same as Barrack. It's just an option if need be. If you need a DPS, then Cassie's an option. It basically becomes more of a what kind of carry do we need? Do we need something that can have mobility? Do we need something that can get high ground? Do we need something like, do we need Haven or blast damage? That's where Cassie fits in, basically. We need this last spot, we need this last carry, these are our options. Cassie's gonna be best here, or Barrack's gonna be best here, or whatever A tier champions there are, you basically flex between those. Drogos, as mentioned, doesn't really have the same follow-up as Bomb King and Andrew do, so it's a bit lackluster, but he is still a good blaster, and he is still consistent damage from like long-range poke and area control. So Drogoz is definitely pretty solid, just not quite the same level as Bomb King and Androxus, just because they lack that follow-up. Like, generally speaking, you're going to see a lot of Bomb King going to one team and Drogoz going to one team because they are the two best blasters. But I think Bomb King is slightly better just because of that mobility and the ability to change what he's doing quickly. Like, Drogoz is kind of stuck doing very specific things. He's stuck with just poking and area control, whereas Bomb King can do both area control and he can jump around the map and help out with team fights. Eevee's B+ tier, similar to Buck. I think Eevee's kind of on the verge of being A tier. She just struggles she struggles against a lot of the champions that are really good right now. Like, obviously Makoa is still good, and Androxus, Bomb King, and Drogoz are all good. So it's kind of hard for her to get any work done. In a casual game or a ranked game, she can definitely do a lot, but when you have a coordinated team fight, then it's very hard for her to actually get an angle like she used to be able to, and punish carries for stepping out of position. But she is actually pretty good against tanks. A lot of these high mobility champions like Androxus and Bomb King are good against tanks because they can just keep their distance and shut them down really easily. And Eevee can definitely do that. She just struggles a bit against the high damage carries that are in the meta right now. So unfortunately, Eevee's not quite A tier, but I would say she's better than Buck, and she's B+ to A tier, just not quite A tier. Fernando, I'd say Fernando's A tier, just like the Barrack. He's a tank option. He's a bit closer to A+ tier than I'd say Barrack is, in that he fits better with the other tanks. Fernando's especially good with like Ruckus, for instance, it's just a really strong comp, and he can fit with a lot of team comps. So I think Fernando's on the verge of being A+, but just not quite there. He fits on par with Barrack, where you can pick him up at any time, and he will fit just fine. He has two options basically. He can play a more flank style, get around, harass the enemy, or he can play a more defensive style of sitting on point. That's something that Wolves do extremely well. They kind of play the Fernando as a point Fernando and just buy as much time, but a lot of other tanks can fill that role, so putting Fernando in a flank role is usually more useful. Grok is our first C tier. Grok is just not good. He can still do a lot of damage, he can still punish stacking, he can still slow people. It's such irrelevant damage. In the current meta, you need relevant damage. You don't need spam, you don't need poke, you just need confirmed kills, and Grok just doesn't provide that. Like, he just really doesn't provide that at all. So he has a lot of survivability, it's just he doesn't do anything with that survivability. He just stands there. Like, you can just ignore him. So that's why Grok's a bit of a C tier right now. He doesn't even fit into a pocket strat or anything. Like, I wouldn't even say, before we argued that he could potentially fit into a pocket strat. If they have a Barrack and a Ying, maybe he'd be useful, but it's not relevant right now. None of that damage, none of that poke damage is relevant because of how strong the healers are. It's all just useless. And at best, he would be used for like consistent cauterize, but even then, it's just like, you may as well just have a Victor then. You may as well have something that can actually deal relevant damage plus do the cauterize effects, or even just a Ruckus, you know? So Grok's just not very useful right now. Grover, I'd say B tier. It's the same as before, really. I'd say, where he can fit into pocket strats. He's never going to be a good general pick, at least in his current state, but he can definitely fit into a pocket strat, and there are teams that have been successful with him. It's just, only thing useful on him is his root, and when you have a character that only has one thing they can do, then, I mean, you know, what can you expect from that character? It's a pocket strat. Let's say Makoa, for instance. A long time people have been saying, oh, Makoa is just a hook. That's all he is, but he can still do a lot of other things. He has the bubble, he has the area control, he has the ability to pop his ult and get a free resurrect, essentially. So, like, Makoa is yes, he's just a hook, but he has all these other aspects, whereas Grover doesn't have those aspects. His heal is mediocre at best, especially later into the game. He's super dependent on snowballing early game, and realistically speaking, it's just a root. Inara, I'd say, is A+ tier. Don't get me wrong, Inara's great. Inara she got a buff recently, and she definitely moved up, but she's really not that great. Like, it's very easy to overestimate how much the buffs are going to do to her. Like, she's on par with other tanks. She's nothing compared to Makoa still, in my opinion. She can buy a lot of time, but the issue is that the time that she buys is not particularly useful. It's sort of like that same issue that Grok has, where Grok, yes, he can stay alive, he can be there, he can be a nuisance, but at the end of the day, it's not relevant. Inara obviously is a lot better than that. She is relevant, she's just not as relevant as some other tanks. Like, she's just a presence, and that presence is extremely annoying and it is extremely useful for a tank, but it's nothing like Makoa, who has the presence and he has the potential to swing a team fight in his favor. Inara doesn't have that, and that's why I'd say she's A+ tier. I'd definitely pick her over Iberica or Fernando right now because of how much survivability and how much general presence she has, but I wouldn't say that she excels, like, or she goes above A+. Kinessa's kind of in the same spot as before, B+ tier, where she's a great option for specific strats. She's, like, certain maps she will excel on, and she's a good damage carry. She's just like, she's not A tier where you can pick her and put her into almost any comp. Like, you're not going to go, oh, what's our last DBS option? Well, let's just take Kinessa, right? You're going to go, okay, we're on this specific map, they have this specific comp, let's grab the Kinessa. And when you do that, she's going to be very good, just like the Eevee and the Buck. When you have the specific scenario that she excels at, she's going to do very well. She is going to excel. So I'd say she's a solid B+ tier. She's kind of the definition of a B+ tier. Lex, I think, is A tier along with Cassie. They both have, it's very similar. I'd say Cassie is a bit more general than Lex. Cassie's going to fit into more comps and more situations, but Lex is a bit better. When he does fit into the situation, he does it much better. So like on Jaguar Falls against multiple tanks, Lex is going to do very well, and better than a Cassie is. But Cassie also fits into more situations. She's a bit more generic. So it's kind of two different ways of looking at the A tier, but I'd say Lex is on par with Cassie at the moment at least. Maeve is our second C tier. There's no reason to pick Maeve right now. She doesn't have the follow-up and survivability potential like an Androxus or a Bomb King to be higher tier. She doesn't have general consistent damage like Lex or Cassie to be A tier. She just doesn't really fit into anything right now. Potentially she could move up to B tier with specific pocket strats if you need the blind, or if you need just a champion that will always follow up on like a Makoa hook or something. But I really just don't see. I feel like it's too risky to actually pull out in a competitive setting. In ranked and casual games, maybe you could argue she's a bit higher because you cause a lot of commotion and you're just annoying and you're a nuisance when you don't have that communication. But we should be assuming that the competitive teams and even the higher end ranked games are going to have more communication and more awareness, and maybe it's going to be a lot worse then. So she's just kind of meh right now. Makoa, I'd say, is still S+ tier. I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not S+ tier. He's just such a game changer. One hook will change the game. One ult will change the game. Even one shield could potentially change the game if you have like Barrier Reef or something, right? He has so many different ways to influence a game that he's just undeniably still the first pick option. It's impossible to not see him as a extremely valuable pick. So I'd say just a solid S+ tier. You're gonna be first picking him every single game pretty much. And if you don't first pick him, it's because you have a very specific reason not to. Like a pocket strat or you're relying on something else to deal with it basically. And even then I wouldn't recommend it. Pip, I think Pip is probably B+ tier. Arguably A tier. It's kind of like he doesn't really fit into the A tier because of a very specific reason. That reason being that he's blast damage. We have Bomb King, we have Drogos, who are consistent blast damage dealers, and having 2 blasters, especially in a meta that often supports 2 tanks, then having 2 blast damage and 2 tanks and a healer, for instance, that's just going to mean that your damage is going to be completely nerfed, because they're all going to get blast shields, and then you just have low damage on carries that are reliant on them not having blast shields. Like, that's the reason you look to get a Bomb King Androxus, right? Or a Drogus and an Androxus, or a Drogus and a Cassie, is because you want that split damage, so that at least if one of them can't do damage, the other one will. So having 2 blasters on a team, I wouldn't recommend it in most situations. Some situations can allow for it. Let's say if you have a team comp where they're forced to get a lot of Cauterize or a lot of Wrecker, and they can't invest into blast shields, then potentially you can look to go 2 blasters. Or if you're just going to run solo tank with, say, like a Ruckus and a Ying, who both have high Haven damage value, and then you have a Lex or a Cassie for Haven damage as well, then you could probably pick up 2 blasters and get away with it. But I'd say he's not really worth it. Like, going 2 blasters and having that second blaster be a pip, it's just, you're gonna be missing a lot of damage. You're gonna be hindering yourself basically, versus picking a Cassie or a Lex that can do more damage in Haven form basically. So I'd say Pip is an okay pick. You can fit him into certain comps, but I wouldn't just have him as a general pick option. Ruckus I think is still a plus tier. Again, just like we said last week, in this meta with 1, 2, sometimes even 3 tanks, Ruckus excels because he's so good at dealing with other tanks. He is, out of all the tanks, he is the tank killer. He is the one that can fuck shit up if you're in a tank meta. So having him is very valuable. And then not only that, he has a lot of survivability, he has a lot of zone control, and the big one also is that he has consistent tagging. He's always alive, he always has damage, he has almost infinite ammo, and he can keep tagging people with Cauterize all the time. So having Ruckus is definitely a valuable resource to your team composition for multiple reasons. Just like the survivability, the zone control, the Cauterize tagging, the potential burst on tanky targets. He just has a little bit of everything, so I'd say he's a solid A+ tier, a bit better than Barrack and Fernando, but not quite as good as Makoa. Saris, I think a lot of people are overvaluing Saris. I'd say she's A+ tier. Yes, her heals are super fucking broken, and yes, her ult is super fucking broken, but at the end of the day, it's still just a healer. Like, I'm fine with picking SNEK, right? If I go into a competitive game and I look at our 2 compositions and they take Saris, I go, okay, I'll take SNEK. Sure. Like, it's not as influential as you might think it is, because she struggles with the double tank meta, where you don't have, like, SNEK can easily out heal Saris in a double tank meta. The ult is more relevant, and because it splits up the tanks. Yes, Saris ult is great, but it still doesn't actually point break as much as SNEK ult does because of the shields. So if played correctly, I think SNEK can be on par with Saris, and at the end of the day, it's not as influential as you think. Like, I've played games where on the new patch on PTS and had a SNEK or a Ying out heal me. I've had games where I out healed a Saris with SNEK or Ying. So it's not as influential as you might think it actually is, having that 1 second less cooldown. And the ult, yes, it has potential to wipe a fight, but it's not realistic to look at it like that. SNEK is a much more consistent ultimate still. It's like, if Saris gets a good ult, then yes, it is a better ult than if SNEK gets a good ult. But if you're talking about just generally like solo ulting someone, ulting defensively, potentially breaking up a point stack, then SNEK still has the better ult. So overall, I'd still think that SNEK has the better ult, even though Saris has potential to wipe a team entirely. So yes, Saris is good. She's A+ in my opinion. I don't think she deserves to go any higher than that. She's still just a healer, and it's still manageable in every way basically. If we're talking casual games, yes, Saris can probably excel much more than any other healer, because people don't buy Cauterize. People don't have consistent tagging. People don't think about the game as much as in competitive or higher end rank scenes, you know? So yes, she can get away with a lot in casual games, but in competitive, at the end of the day, it's still just a healer. Sha Lin, I think, is A tier. He's a consistent DPS option. He struggles a little bit on the mobility side of things, but the one thing that's really nice about Sha Lin is that he's very good at helping other teammates. If one of your damage carries is in trouble, then Sha Lin is great at being ready to help that teammate with a stun, with planted, or with just a 1k damage shot, you know? So he's definitely good at getting consistent damage, and he's good at following up on teammates, but he struggles a lot with the mobility. He struggles a lot with being able to pressure the enemy team when you have to. Like, that's such a good thing with Androxus and Bomb King, right? They can get up on the high grounds, they can pressure the enemy without like putting themselves at risk. They can get in their face and be really obnoxious, whereas Sha Lin can't really do that, right? Sha Lin can't survive that kind of situation. So at the end of the day, he is just a consistent damage dealer that can help out your teammates, similar to Cassie and Lex. So I'd say solid DPS option. If you're looking for a DPS option and you don't have the ones that you actually want, then you can go, okay, let's grab Sha Lin. That's perfectly fine. Skye, C tier, don't pick Skye. SNEK, I think, is almost on par with Seris. I'd say he's just a good option. I would still probably prefer to pick Seris in most situations. If I have the choice between Seris and SNEK, then I'm probably going to choose Seris in most situations, but I'm not bothered if someone picks Seris, right? If someone picks Seris, I can go, sure, I'll take SNEK, that's fine. But I'd still, if I had the option, I think I would still take Seris in a lot of situations just because of the heal, you know, just because of the right click. So I think SNEK is A tier. He's just like, he's that option. If Seris is taken, you go, sure, I'm going to take SNEK then. Torvald, I think, is B tier. I think it's still just a pocket strat, just like Grover. It's an option if you want to look to do something specific. We saw it last weekend. D69 brought out the Torvald, and it worked really well for them. But it is, at the end of the day, it is still just a pocket strat. It is just something that's gonna work a couple times at best. Or if you're really, really good at it, then you can play it consistently, like D69 have in the past. But overall, like, he doesn't do enough to warrant a general tank pick like Barrack or Fernando or Ruckus or Inara. So I'd say he's B tier. You can fit him into certain comps if you have a very specific plan with it, but overall he's not going to excel because he's just going to stand there and do nothing. Tyra, similar to Torvald and Grover, she's actually a bit interesting because she does actually kind of fit into the meta because she is a tank killer and she can really eat. She can eat people up. Her DPS is so high if she's consistent. If she has good aim, then she can really fuck shit up. But she also is lacking a lot of mobility. She's lacking high ground. She's lacking any sort of follow-up on teammates. Like, she just struggles in a lot of the stuff that's important. But that being said, you could potentially see her being pulled out as a specific strat, right? You have a Ruckus, you have a Barrack, two tanks that don't have too much mobility, that are kind of forced to stand in specific areas. Like Barrack sets up his turrets, right? And then he's kind of forced to be around them. So then you could throw a Molotov and you could potentially see that working. You have a lot of burst for that. Or Ruckus, who you can just stand and farm damage on, just like you would with, say, a Ying or something, or a Victor. So she potentially could fit into the meta a little bit. If you see a great opportunity for her, we might see her picked, but overall, she's not just a great, like, general option. Willow, I would say, is B+ tier. I want to put her in A tier, but I don't feel like I can put her in A tier because we haven't seen her. I still think she's really good. I still think she has potential to be A tier, potentially even A+ tier, but since we haven't seen her, we haven't seen how she could fit into the meta. That just goes to say that people don't really want to play her right now. And yes, I enjoy playing Willow. Yes, I think Willow is a good option. Yes, I think you can do great things with Willow. But at the end of the day, I can't prove that, right? I can't show that I think Willow is great. So I think that Willow's B+ tier. I think she's an option. She's there. You can pick her, you can play her. Similar to the Pip, it's going to be hard to fit her in with multiple blasters, but she is an option if you have a specific strategy. If you see a good situation to pick her, then you could probably pick her, and you could probably do pretty well with her, in my opinion. Victor, I think, is A+ tier. This might be a bit strange due to how I've described some of the other characters. Lex and Cassie and Shaolin, I've described them in a similar way that you might describe Victor. Consistent damage, but lacking a little something. In Victor's case, he doesn't have too much mobility, he doesn't have too much survivability, but he's still a bit better than them because he has the potential to zone certain areas. He has surprisingly good 1v1 potential. He has more consistent damage than Shaw, Lex, or Cassie. He has tagging, which we already mentioned with Ruckus is extremely useful and extremely important right now. Consistent cauterized tagging. Another big thing is that someone underestimates, or a lot of people underestimate, is the grenades. Like being able to throw grenades around corners when people are healing up and shoulder peeking is actually really useful. It's surprisingly important, and it can actually pay off a lot, being able to consistently land your grenade in spots that people might not be expecting. And then on top of that, he has the ability to move back and forth to certain areas. So he doesn't have immediate mobility like an Androxus or a Bomb King does, but he has a lot of general mobility where he can get around the map very quickly if he so chooses. So he can very consistently reposition himself and get a new angle, and when he does get that new angle, a lot of the time he's more impactful than Cassie, Lex, or Shaolin might be. And then on top of that, he also has an extremely useful ultimate that's not only good for this meta, but just good in general, where he could very easily just get a quick pick. It's a lot like Eevee Ultimate, where it's a guaranteed pick if you hit it. So it is very useful to have a Victor in the team, and I would say he's better than Cassie, Lex, or Shaolin right now, just because of those few things that I mentioned. Last but not least, we have Ying. I think Ying is B+ tier. She's kind of on par with SNEK, but not quite. She has, it's interesting because she doesn't have as much healing as SNEK, but she has damage, so it's kind of a trade-off. In the current state of the game, though, it's more important that you have healing. If you're picking a healer, you should have healing. Yes, Ying can be very useful against tanks, and she can do a lot of damage, but if you wanted a damage carry, then you could pick a more damage-oriented carry. There are some situations where Ying is definitely a good option, where you have a lot of self-sustain, or you don't particularly need the consistent sustain, and then Ying can be very useful. But I would still always prefer having Saris or SNEK. As I'm playing a healer, I want to be healing people, I want to be able to target my heals. Ying is more of everyone's going to be topped off, everyone's going to be healed consistently, whereas SNEK and Saris are both more dedicated, targeted healers. So I would always prefer having Saris or SNEK, and I feel like anytime I play Ying, I end up not healing the people I want to heal, which is very important for a healer. So yeah, that's the tier list for OB50. Again, that's for competitive, high-end, ranked, casual play. Yes, it kind of follows suit in lower-end casual play, but obviously some characters are going to be better in casuals than they are in competitive play, just because lack of communication and disruption. But yeah, this is generally the how I see the meta right now. Again, this is all my personal opinion. This does not reflect the opinion of the entire competitive scene or anything. This doesn't reflect anyone else's opinion. It's just what I think. So yeah, that's about it.